Today I'd like to talk about the 10-year rule for RVs, what it is, why RVers hate it, and what you can do about it. So, what's the 10-year rule? Well, most RV parks don't let in RVs that are over 10 years old. Pretty simple. So this begs the question, why? I'll let you know why parks feel this way. Essentially, the rigs are kind of unsightly and they have a habit of breaking down. So there are a couple of consequences if you have somebody staying at your RV park and they're in an unreliable rig and it breaks down. One thing is if they're supposed to leave the spot that's intended for somebody else, this can cause huge customer service hassles.
Excuse me, I had this spot first.
It can make it very difficult, especially if they're a park with kind of a full capacity and there's almost like a domino effect. If you have a bunch of rigs that are breaking down and using that spot that other people have booked, then you're chaining this down the road, everything's going nuts, it's a nightmare.
No rules is chaos.
And the person who's in the spot who had their rig breakdown and was supposed to leave, they might not actually have the money to pay for their spot. So you have this person that's basically there squatting that can't leave. It can be expensive to tow an RV, especially if it's a motorhome or something that isn't towed with a trailer, so it's not necessarily a viable option. And I'm not sure of all the legal implications. I imagine it could get pretty sticky in legal terms if you towed an owner's trailer without their permission, owed money or no. And not only that, but there have been some cases where people were in one of these older rigs, it wouldn't start. It wasn't a very expensive rig. They got it for a song or got it for free or something. And when they couldn't start it, and when the RV park wanted them to leave, they left and left the RV behind, like trash.
How rude.
So then you've got the owner that's stuck with this motorhome and maybe it's not sound or not worth anything because it was given away in the first place and could be infested or have any other sorts of problems, and then they have to get it towed, they have to pay for it to be trashed. It's a hassle. It's something a lot of owners don't want to deal with.
I understand.
Okay, so you got kind of an idea of why parks have this policy. So why does this tick RVers off? Well, the biggest reason is that RVs, like automobiles, tend to depreciate quickly. So a much older RV can be gotten very inexpensively for a song or even given away for free sometimes.
Free! Free is good, right?
And when properly upkept, they can be in good repair. That's the key there, properly upkept. They either have to be maintained as you go along or you have to be willing to do a lot of renovation and reconstruction of the RV. And some people are very gifted with this, and it can turn something that is unsafe or unsound into practically a new RV, and in some cases better, depending on how much you reinforce it. And new RVs are costly, and they lose their value quickly. So it's very expensive to have to buy a new RV every 10 years or get denied entrance by parks.
You think I'm made of money?
And furthermore, some parks not only have a 10-year rule, there are parks out there that have a 5-year rule, a 3-year rule, a 2-year rule.
Excuse me, what?
Justin and I actually stayed at an RV park that had like new as their condition. So they wanted it to either be new or it had to look new.
That's too much, indeed.
So if you could imagine having to get a brand new RV every couple of years, that's astronomical.
I can't afford that.
And it can feel particularly unfair, especially because a lot of people new to RVing don't find out about the rule until after they've purchased an older rig and fixed it up and they go to book RV parks and they're having a hard time finding a place to stay.
Next time, a little warning.
It's very costly and it can feel very unfair. Okay, so what can you do? Well, the first thing you can do is if you have an older rig, you can call around parks and see if they have this rule, places that you would want to stay. You can get on the phone and do this. I've seen people having really good luck on the forums, on Reddit or on Facebook, getting on there and saying, hey, I have this older rig, I've heard about this 10-year rule, I'm looking for places to stay in XY area. And I've seen people kind of give advice. That can be kind of hit or miss depending on who's on, how much attention you get, if people know the area, but I have seen people kind of taking that route. I've also noticed in my travels that I can't speak definitively about this because I haven't stayed at every KOA campground, but As of this recording, I have not stayed at a KOA campground that had a 10-year rule. They aren't the cheapest places to stay. I've talked about that in another video Justin and I did about why they're expensive yet a pretty good value. But they do tend to not discriminate against rig age. And I think maybe that's part of their customer qualification process, where some places might qualify their customers by saying you need a rig that's 10 years or newer. KOA kind of builds that into the pricing. So people who would be willing to pay for their prices probably have the wherewithal and the means to maintain their rigs properly or hire somebody to do it for them, that sort of thing, even if they have an older rig. And additionally, there are ways of getting around the rules sometimes if a park has a 10-year rule. So if you see a park that has a 10-year rule, one of the things you can do is you can contact them. Typically on the telephone is best, talk to a real person, or show up in person if you're local to them or happen to be in the area. And some of the parks that have this rule will actually bypass it if you have a photo of your rig that you can show them, where you can show them it's in good shape. Some want just external photos, some also want internal photos. Basically, you're proving that the rig is older but well maintained. It is not something that's going to fall apart. Now, not all parks will actually let you do this, but I have heard that most parks that have the 10-year rule, if you show them the pictures and everything, they will be willing to work with you if you have a really nicely maintained rig. I have heard that sometimes parks will still say, no, I'm sorry, that's against policy. I believe this is particularly the case if they're part of an RV resort chain. There's several RV resort chains out there that have 10-year rule policies. Like I said, KOA doesn't have a broad corporate policy, but there are other brands that do, and they will not make exceptions for you because there's corporate to answer to. And you know, it's up to people whether they want to bend their rules for you anyway. So, but it never hurts to ask, and often they will let you in. So that's the 10-year rule in a nutshell. We haven't had to navigate it too much because for our foray into full-time RV living, we had already heard about the 10-year rule. We were worried about it, so we bought a brand new Class C when we bought an RV. But we might have to navigate this in the future if we upgrade to a Class A, because we've been looking at some used models that are in good condition. And Justin is very handy, and he's learning a lot more about buses and diesel and that sort of thing as we go along. And so we might find something that's a Class A that has a few years on it that we can fix up and make like new. That might be in violation of the 10-year rule, but in good condition. It's something we're especially interested once we have a home base again, some place where we can work on it, because you know how it is when you're on the road full time. A lot of parks don't like you doing repair work. Anyway, it's been great talking to you as always. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.